after some of the weather we had. For this program, first I want to say, is sponsored by the Fulton County Community Foundation, which helps PAC to provide speakers, and it's a great. We don't charge for these programs, of course, and we don't have a way in order to keep the birds on the start PAC, to have a way to take care of the speakers and their travel. Be sure to support, or if you see Elizabeth's name, tell her thanks, including PAC in their contributions. Janie Marlow, our speaker today, and her husband Steve, from Travelers Rest. Janie went to Furman University and actually started her love of plants when she was a child, and her mother she grew up around Clemson, right? From that Clemson area. Her mother would take her on walks and say, well, this is that, and this is this. You know, somehow we each get our passions from somewhere, it doesn't spring up. And most of the people I've talked to whose love of plants has come from a mother or a grandmother or somebody who was special to them. And so the love of the plants continues the love of that person. And I think, as Steve was saying when we were conversing, what I have found is the more I know about plants, the more fun it is, because it's like knowing people, you know, to recognize, and that seeds that interest. You gradually can say, well, I know all the people. That one I didn't, so you can focus on what Janie and her husband were graphic designers, and had a retail store in Greenville for 25 years. And but all that time she was, you know, her interest and her passion was plants. And she started quite early, like 10 or 11 years ago, that she developed from the ground up, her husband told me, that will help us when we leave here and go home to, from now forward, be able to get that person. And so she's going to show us today how her website and how we can improve our knowledge through that website. And so with no further ado, I will turn you over to Janie.
Thank you, Babs. And thank you, Pam. Thank you all for coming. I am excited to be here this morning to have a chance to talk to y'all about the website namethatplant.net. And people sometimes ask me, whatever possessed me to embark on such a impossible project. And that's kind of a long story, but I'm going to touch on a couple things. And one is, as Babs mentioned, the love of wild plants, the love of the natural areas has been with me since I was a little girl. And I really want people to share that love, and the only way you're going to love something is if you can get to know it, because you don't really just love things that you aren't acquainted with. So I want to share that. And it seems like that today they've come up with a word now called the green blur. And the green blur refers to just all the vegetation that we drive by, but we never even stop to look at it. But if we would look, you know, this blur is made up of individuals, and these individuals have names, and they each have a part to play in a marvelously complex system that we live in. And it's just something that you never can learn enough about. But another reason that I built the website is because I needed it. I really wish that my head would hold all the knowledge that the website displays, but it doesn't. And so I've got a place to look it up. And the net in the name is there to remind us of the network of people who do know this stuff, who are experts, who have contributed their knowledge to the building of the site. The name of the site is Native and Naturalized Plants of the Carolinas and Georgia. And sometimes people ask me, what is a native plant? And I think generally people consider plants to be native if they lived in this particular region before the coming of Europeans to America. And so obviously a plant that comes from Europe is not native to this area, but equally a plant from Arizona might not be native to this area, even though it is native to North America. A naturalized plant is a plant that's come from somewhere else and it's jumped ship. It's no longer, it was brought here either accidentally or horticulturally. It's in the garden, or maybe it was just in packing material. But it's now growing, reproducing on its own, spreading on its own without assistance from humankind. So it's on its own. Honeysuckle. We think of that, and that's everywhere, but it came from, Asia. But that's naturalized. It's very well established here. And the focus of this website is the Carolinas and Georgia, but it does go beyond that. But it's a local focus. It doesn't try to, to cover everything. It's just plants that are growing wild in this area. So how many of y'all have been to the website? Okay. I'm going to take you there now. I'm going to leave the PowerPoint, go to the website. So let me have just a minute to make a transition. Come on. Okay. Okay, here we are. Before I finish today, I'm going to try to touch on a number of the different features, but right now I'm just going to start by searching for a plant, because that's what most people do first. And you can search either here or over here. They both take you pretty much to the same place, but let's start out by common name. And I'm going to search for blue cohosh. So when you go to what I call a plant detail page, the first thing you probably notice are the pictures. And the pictures on this website are sorted by sequence. So ideally, you start out early in the year and you go on late in the year. So we may start out with just emerging leaves and get into flowers and then to fruit. And if you want to, these are like thumbnails on here, but if you want to see them up close, you can hover over the picture and it'll get bigger. Or if you click on it, you can, just leave it there and set it aside on your computer and then go to something else. There are words under the pictures, and sometimes, again, people will, just kind of look at the pictures and ignore the words, but the words point out something that's in the picture that you might not notice, or I wouldn't notice, so unless somebody pointed it out to me. It's like when you go on a field trip and you just look and you go, well, there's a flower and there's a flower, but I can't tell the difference. But if you've got somebody with you that really knows it, they can say, well, look at that and look at that, and you go, oh, I see. And now I wouldn't have been pointed it out to me. So that's what I try to do with the notes under the pictures. And those notes usually come from a book. So you can, if you want to find out more about the book that the note comes from, you can click that and read about the book. You may decide, I want to buy that book. And sometimes, that's one of the things I'm trying to do on that, because sometimes there's some really good books, but your local bookstore might not have them because they're niche-y. I mean, there's only a small audience that really goes for some of these titles, and a general bookstore can't carry all of that, but they'll be glad to order it for you. But if you know what you're looking for, you can tell them that's what I want. Sometimes the book, I'll try to use the words that the book uses in describing plants. Not always, it's not direct quotes, but sometimes that is botanical language that's unfamiliar to us. And so, a couple reasons of doing that. One, when you can see the word and you see a picture of it, it helps me to learn. It's like children learn language with picture books. You see a picture and you see a word, you remember it longer than just reading it and learning a definition. But if you do want to see a definition, we do have a glossary. And you can click on any of those words to get a definition or a discussion. And then over here are links to other glossaries that are maybe more complete than this one. So you don't have an excuse for not looking the word up. If you want to see, let me see, okay. The book, but then over here, there's a list of books that describe the plant, because there's only so much this website can show you. You want to read more, well, you've probably got some wildflower books at home, but this one has this plant and this one doesn't, and this one calls it by a different name. But so I've gone ahead and listed some books that I know of that discuss this plant and told you what page number it's on. So again, you don't have an excuse for, don't say I don't have time to look it up. It's looked up for you already. Over here in the gray part is more information about the plant, like when it blooms, how many petals or whatever. Right here, it's a general map as to where the plant is found, but if you click right here, it takes you to a website put out by the University of North Carolina, which gives you a county by county of where they have that plant documented. And if you go on up here, you'll see this tells you that it's native to the Carolinas and Georgia, fairly common but rare in the Piedmont and rare in South Carolina. Up here we've got the names, and again, if you want more information, if you click this Plants National Database, it takes you to the page, and this is a national database, and they'll have other information about it and more pictures. So all of that is just right there handy for you. And if you click this, now this probably isn't going to work, Well, it will work, but you won't hear it. But listen. Could you hear it? Okay. So whenever you see a little button like that, you can click it to learn how to pronounce the Latin. Don't you love it? Okay, so this time, down here in the notes under the pictures, it says the specific epithet, and that is the species name. It's Caulophyllum thalictroides. Well, thalictroides means resembling thalictrum. So if you click that, the little compare, it takes you to other plants that the leaves look similar to the one we were just looking at. Because, I mean, when you look at them side by side, you can tell they're different. But if you're like me, you see it you just see this one plant, and you can't remember why. You don't know which one of these things it is. You know it's one of these. It looks kind of like that, but it's nice to have it together. You can compare them and even see little notes that tell you, okay, well, these leaflets go up to being 3-lobed, and somewhere over here, these one may have 9 lobes. Well, again, I might not have noticed that unless they pointed it out to me. Okay, now we're going to search for, instead of just searching for blue cohosh, I'm going to search just for cohosh. I'm still using common names. And we've got something here called white cohosh, but I usually call that doll's eyes. Black cohosh, and mountain black cohosh, and blue cohosh. Well, those are all common names. And you can see that the blue cohosh flowers are very much different than the others. But let's just do another quick comparison. Let's go leaves. And you can see that the blue cohosh leaves are quite much different than these others. And it does have little, again, the words point out some of the differences on the leaves. You can also see the fruit. Okay, that's why they call this one doll's eyes, because it really looks like a doll's eyes, the fruit does. And I guess that's why they call it blue cohosh, because the fruit is blue. But let's look a little bit at this black cohosh. And you'll notice on this one, on the blue cohosh, it was so nice, all the Latin names up there were the same. But on this one, we do have different Latin names. And the reason for that is that the botanists changed their mind, I guess. I mean, you know. But, you know, if you've got an old book, and a good many of the wildflower books that are on my shelf will use the old name. But the newer books will use the newer name. And they've done DNA studies and all this, and they, you know, oh, well, it looked like this, but it's really related to this, so we need to change the name. And I brought some of the references that those names are derived from. I mean, in the older one there that says Simistifuga racemosa, it is from this book, which came out in the 60s. And it's still considered almost a Bible in this area. But this is gradually replacing it, but it's much heavier and harder to carry. So, but the name in this book and on the Plants National Database is the Actea racemosa. So anyway, all I'm trying to say is that the website does give you synonyms, the older names and the newer names. And look how sometimes we'll have, okay, see, like this picture has black cohosh on the left and blue cohosh on the right. And then that's just another way of helping get in your mind how they look different. Okay, there's another one here. Okay, this is getting even more confusing. Black cohosh on the left, false goat's beard on the right. There are too many things that look alike. So here, click this compare. Compound leaves of woodland herbs with toothed margins. And that's all these. You know, when I'm out in the woods, all I know is it's one of these, but I can't, I can't remember or sort it out just from the leaves. But anyway, so that's why I put this here so that y'all can compare them. And if you lock in on your mind when you're at home studying these pictures and reading the stuff underneath it, you know, like, okay, goat's beard, the terminal leaf does not have any lobes. False goat's beard, it may have lobes. Okay. Anyway, these are little tips to help us. If you like these compare things, there's a whole page of them. These are the things that trip you up, or they trip me up, so I made a page out of them. Okay, I'm going to show you leaves of poison ivy and others confused with it. Well, you might not confuse kudzu with poison ivy, but there are times that it almost looks like it. Wafer ash does for sure. And all these things are poison ivy, even though they all look different. Then there's poison oak, and fragrant sumac, poison, let's see. And look at this, box elder. Doesn't that look like poison oak? Poison ivy? And of course, people always get Virginia creeper mixed up, but that's easy. But anyway, another one that I'm going to show you is, let's see. And these are fun just to go and play with. But this is sumac in Tree of Heaven. Now, sumac, there's several different species of sumac, but it's that, it's a wonderful native shrub, sometimes tree, and it's just beautiful in the fall. I don't know if you see some of the, let's see. But I thought in our yard where we live now, I thought that I had some really, really robust sumac. I mean, it was just getting so strong and tall, but I couldn't figure out which species it was. Well, it turned out it wasn't sumac at all. It was Tree of Heaven, which Tree of Heaven is an exotic plant. It's not native. It's native to East Asia. And not only is it not native, but it is invasive. And these are just a few of the authorities that are telling us that it is doing harm to natural areas. But honestly, I didn't know that that was an option because the books that I were looking at were native shrubs and trees, and they didn't include this, and I never thought to look. But if you want to tell, I mean, and at a glance, the leaves are, you know, they kind of look the same. But the tree of heaven has these little, I'm going to see. See that right there? And right there? That is a gland at the base of those leaflets. And that little knot in that little gland will tell you that's tree of heaven. That's not sumac. Cut it down. In fact, you can't cut it down. If you cut it down, it sprouts 100 more. So you need to do this special hack and squirt where you put a hatchet in it and squirt the herbicide into the bark so that it seeps down to the roots and kills it before it knows it's been wounded. Otherwise, if you just chop it down, the roots will all each sprout and they'll have anyway. So if you want more information about invasive plants, you can click this link, and that will take you to a page about invasives with links to sites that specialize in information about invasive plants. Let's see. I meant to show you something. Let's see, go back here. Well, anyway. Plant communities. One thing I meant to show you over there when we're on the plant detail page and I was looking at the little map, right above it, it has a description of the plant community that plant can be found in. And sometimes there are notes there and you click those and it'll take you to these pages. And these are pages that describe particular wildflower communities. And so, like if you live in the mountains or the Piedmont or near a rock outcrop or a spring or whatever, but I meant to point this out earlier, so I'm a little out of sequence. But we also have articles of interest, and that is just articles that might be, once you start browsing on this thing, you'll find other things to look at. But like dandelions, okay? You see a dandelion, well, it might be a real dandelion, or it might be something that looks like a dandelion, because there's several that look kind of alike. And this tells you some of the differences between it. You can also search by scientific name. And these are some other plants that are not dandelions, but the flowers kind of look dandelion-like. And they all kind of look alike except for that one. But again, if you use this little tool, the leaves will be quite different. And so you got to remember not just to look at flowers when you're trying to tell things apart. You can also search by family. And I'm going to search for this example. I'm going to go to the orchid family. And this can just be a fun thing to do too, because it's interesting to see what all the different plants look like within a family. But these, the lady slippers, those are orchids. Showy orchis, the fringed orchids. I mean, these things are just beautiful. And these are native orchids that grow wild in our area, which I just, I think it's just marvelous. You see that one? Okay, one more way I'm going to show you how to search, and that is by plant description. And this is where you just answer questions. And